Hi, this is Mike Vrobel from DadCooksDinner.com, and this is how to make Instant Pot Rotisserie Chicken Noodle Soup. The best chicken soup uses homemade chicken broth. And the best chicken for that broth is a leftover roast chicken carcass with lots of clean meat and skin. When I don't have a leftover chicken lying around, I cheat and buy a rotisserie chicken from my grocery store. First, remove the string from the rotisserie chicken, then pull the breasts away from the chicken. They're on top and are separated by a keel bone that runs along the middle. Set the breasts aside and put the chicken carcass into the pot. You can pull some more of the meat off the chicken if you want to, but I'm going to leave it in there because the breasts are enough for the soup that I'm making later. The rest of the broth ingredients come from my refrigerator or pantry. A peeled onion, a scrubbed or peeled carrot, celery, a couple of bay leaves, some salt and peppercorns. For chicken broth recipe details, see here. Pour 8 cups of water into the pot, lock the lid, and set it to pressure cook for 1 hour, and let the pressure come down naturally. This will take a while because of the hot liquids in the pot. If you're in a hurry, you can quick release the pressure, but try to let the pressure come down naturally for as long as you can. Scoop the solids out of the pot and throw them away. They've given their all to the broth. Strain the broth through a fine mesh strainer. I use a second Instant Pot liner because it's the perfect size, and set it aside for later. Once the broth is started, I chop the chicken up into bite-sized pieces and refrigerate it for later. At this point, with the broth finished, everything can be refrigerated for a few days or frozen for up to 6 months. But we're just going to move on to making the soup. Rough chop an onion, a carrot, and a rib of celery. I'm cutting them into bite-sized pieces for the soup. Wipe out the inner pot with paper towels, put it back in the Instant Pot base. Add 2 tablespoons of butter, set the pot to sauté mode adjusted to high, and wait for the butter to melt. Add the onion, carrot, and celery, sprinkle with a half teaspoon of salt, and add a teaspoon of thyme, either fresh or dried. Sauté, stirring the onions occasionally until they start to brown around the edges. This will take 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how hot your pot gets. While the onions are sautéing, I dice up a 4-ounce potato. The potato is optional, but again, it's always in my pantry, so I grab one. Once the onion is sautéed, pour in the chicken broth, add the diced chicken, and the diced potato. Then I add 1 cup of wide egg noodles. I know 1 cup doesn't look like much for all this broth, but the noodles soak up a surprising amount of liquid, and if you add more, this is going to wind up being a chicken stew with noodles, not a chicken soup. Lock the lid and pressure cook on high pressure for 4 minutes. Quick release the pressure once the cooking time is done. If the pot starts to sputter and spit starch instead of just steam, close the valve and let the cooker sit for about 5 minutes to cool down before trying again. Quick releasing the pressure throws the liquid in the pot into a boil, and sometimes that results in the starch from the noodles trying to escape with the steam. Stir in a teaspoon and a half of fine sea salt and a half teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper. Your soup is ready. Ladle it into bowls, serve, and enjoy. Or portion it into 2-cup containers and refrigerate for a couple days or freeze for up to 6 months. I love having chicken noodle soup in the freezer so I can pull it out for a lunch whenever I want it. This has been Mike Vrobel from Dad Cooks Dinner. Thanks for watching. Give this a couple more minutes.